Hey there and welcome. You are listening to the Parkview Global Podcast. We are so excited for you to join the conversations between our global missions hosts and our amazing guests. Don't forget to follow our social media accounts at Parkview Global. Now, enjoy the podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Parkview Global Podcast. My name is Bill Carroll and I am the global pastor here at Parkview Christian Church right outside of Chicago. Today we have our second timer on the Global Podcast. We welcome back Parkview Senior Pastor Tim Harlow, and I'm really excited about today's conversation because it's something completely different than we've done in the previous podcast episodes. We've invited Tim to come and talk about his travels to Israel and the trips he's led and why that has been a significant pilgrimage site for Christians for like the last 2,000 years. So welcome, Tim.
Hey, thank you. Glad to know you have to wear readers.
Yeah, I'm getting old. It's totally true.
Don't get me started. Yeah, good to be here. Good to talk about it. You know, we're both going on trips coming up, and you know, I've got a lot of friends that do it all the time, and it is a great way. I mean, on my side of it, it's a great way to connect with like a little church again. Yeah, you know, kind of. Right. I got you know, a bus full of people or bus and a half full of people that we can hang out. Denise and I just love, you know, we miss the old days when we used to like really be kind of pastors instead of, you know, have all these people that, you know, we can't keep track of. So it's really a lot of fun. And yeah, being in Israel is it's a bucket list thing. Nice. No doubt about it. And I always resisted it. Right. I mean, I was like, whatever. You know, I mean, because, you know, it's not my MO. I'm not into, you know, all that, you know, kind of stuff. I even won a free trip one time. Really? Yeah, at some convention or something. But it was just one of those times when everything was blowing up over there, and I was like, no, I don't think so. Right. But then once I went, got to see, you know, what it could do in people's lives. It's been, I don't know, I think we've been 3 or 4 times, and you know, and then we did the steps of Paul once too. So all that stuff is fantastic.
What led to your first trip?
First trip was, you know, I mean, let's just admit it. These tour groups want you. Israel, number one industry is tourism. Yeah, totally. They want you over there. The tour groups want to get you over there because if they get you over there, then you're going to bring people. So a tour group put me and it was Mike Baker down at Eastview. Nice. And Cal Jernigan out in Phoenix, and J.P. Jones, who was in Champaign, and a couple others. So there was just like 6 couples or something, and so it was actually hilarious because we were all pretty good friends. So we would all just go to the back of the bus, and the first guide we had, he was mad at us all the time because he's like, over here you see, and we're just like, whatever, we're talking to our friend. So that didn't go well, but then we found a good guide, and he relaxed with us, and it was fun. Nice.
So you've led multiple trips now. Like, what are like the big stops on the Holy Land tour? Like, what are the major sites that you probably see?
I knew you were going to ask me that, and it's hard for me. I mean, like, everybody's got their different thing. Yeah. For me and for a lot of people, you know, the warning is there's been 2,000 years of history on top of, you know, where Jesus walked. So, like, the only place you can probably really walk where Jesus walked, like literally, you know, maybe on the same stones, if that was something you were into, is coming down the Mount of Olives into Jerusalem. So I always serpentine that so that I can, you know, try to get on some place that Jesus walked. But, you know, otherwise it's like 7 or 10 feet down is crazy. Where that stuff was. So, you know, and the church, you know, Big C Church has built on top of all this stuff. So when I go to Bethlehem, we don't go to the place where Jesus supposedly was born, because there are 3 churches that have built up over it, and it's this stupid little spot that you can crawl in and put your hand on this spot. We go to the Shepherd's Cave, nice. Which is out in the field and helps you to understand what it would have been like. So what I started to say was everybody's favorite spot, I think, is the Sea of Galilee. Wow. Because when you go out on an old fishing boat, and be sure to tell the fishing boat guy that you do not want any music, okay? Because one time I went, and Well, the first time we went, and these guys they were great Christian guys, but they had a CD of their music.
Oh, no.
So they were playing it on the boat the whole time, and then they wanted to sell them to us. And also there's some weird thing that, I don't know if it was a Baptist or what, but somebody started asking the fishing boats to fly the American flag
Weird.
on the boat while they were in the Sea of Galilee. So I'll give you all the pointers.
Yeah, please,
That's
for
just
sure.
really weird.
Wait,
but anyway.
who had American flag with them?
Oh, well, I mean, so now they all have them. All the fishing boats are like, oh, well, in case the crazy Americans come,
Yeah, right, seriously.
fly their flag. Anyway, Sea of Galilee,
Yeah.
you're feeling it. You know, you're feeling Peter getting out of the boat. You're feeling all the stuff that this is exactly how it was. And Mount Beatitudes, same thing. You can stand on the edge of the Sea of Galilee and imagine Jesus reinstating Peter and saying, because he was cooking fish right there on the edge, and you go have Peter's lunch at a restaurant there and eat the fish with the eyes still in it and everything, and that part I think probably is the most reverent couple of days that you spend.
Cool.
And then the church has their official place where Jesus was crucified, and it's probably what it is. But again, it's just a bunch of crazy looking stuff that the church has built up, and you wait in line and you go touch the rock, and I guess you got to do it once, but there's another place where they discovered an empty tomb and a garden, and the rocks kind of look like it could have been a skull, like it could have been Golgotha, and whether it really is the right spot or not, you go in there, you take communion. We always take our group in a little cave area, sing some old hymns, and then have communion there.
Cool.
And there's a tomb that you go in with an old Byzantine cross on it. So whether it was the right one or not, it is the real thing. It makes you feel the real thing. So you kind of got to get past the tourism and how many places can you buy olive wood carvings, and all that kind of stuff. You kind of got to know that going in, but.
So you're saying don't purchase a piece of the original cross?
No, don't do that. But I did bring this in because one of the things about going to Israel is
tell them what you're holding for the audience.
This is 30 pieces of silver.
Nice.
I don't know if it's a drachma. I can't even remember what it was called. But I mean, this is a 2,000-year-old coin. Now this is Greek, so Judas would have had the Roman one, which would have cost me a ton more. But this is legitimate from that time. So I keep this around to remind myself of Judas betraying Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. I've got a ring. I should have brought my ring. I've got a ring with a widow's mite in it. And you can buy antiquities in Israel. It's the only place that you can buy because they've got so much of it there. The widow's mites are so common now that the Dead Sea is receding. They're everywhere. So it's really crazy. So it's also a really neat place to get some neat stuff that you're going to have forever. Cool. You want some olive wood. You just don't need to stop every time there's a stand.
So you talk about walking in the steps of Jesus or whatever. Been to Rome a couple of times. I know you've been to Ephesus. That's those places you can actually stand where Paul stood.
Yeah,
that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is, and I mean, if you're really in the place where Jesus was, what you do get to see, you at the Sea of Galilee, at the Dead Sea, you get to see the Dead Sea. You get to float in the Dead Sea, which is a super cool experience. You go up, on the Mount of Transfiguration. You look out over the Valley of Armageddon. You do all of those things those stories that come to Mount Carmel, and there's you go up on Mount Carmel. And there's a statue of Elijah, and that's where the Elijah conquered the 400 prophets of Baal. Yeah. And that's a super cool sight, and it's a really neat place to look out. I mean, just so much history. Yeah. And depending on what you do, sometimes you go to Nazareth, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you go to Cana, sometimes you don't. I mean, if you go to Cana, buy some wine. I've got a bottle of wine from Cana. Nice. They say it's terrible, but I'm not ever going to open it because that's where Jesus made wine, and that's another thing, from a symbolic standpoint. So, we, you can take communion in the garden.
Wow.
We renew vows in Cana, at a little church in Cana where Jesus did his first miracle, the wedding. So any couples that want to do that,
Awesome.
we do that there. And then, what's the other thing? Oh, well, you can get baptized in the Jordan.
Right.
Which is, it's the same Jordan, and yeah, you pay a little money, and, there's stuff to buy, and there's lots of other people around, but, I mean, it's still getting baptized in the Jordan. It's still a very, very cool religious experience.
The closest I've come to Israel is we were on the Jordanian side, and one of the spots where they say the real baptismal spot it's the Jordanian side, but you come over and you can see the people on the Israel side getting baptized, and my son was throwing rocks from Jordan to Israel. That's as close as we got.
Good. Let's keep that war going. Way to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so the big question, how do you think a trip to the Holy Land adds depth or development to a Christian spiritual life?
Yeah, Denise is the one that says this a lot,
Nice.
but it's just so, I keep thinking of all the different places, but you go to the altar of Pan, where Jesus said the gates of hell will not prevail against us, and you start to understand that this was a place, that Jesus and the disciples went way out of the way to a very ungodly area to have this little conversation, and Jesus is saying the gates of hell will not prevail, and the gates of hell are a monument that are right there, where literally the pagans in past times before Jesus would sacrifice their children, to this pagan god, and so you get out on, like I said, you do a sunrise on the Sea of Galilee and think about all of that stuff. So then now you're reading back through the Bible. Like this weekend, I'm going to talk about Jesus healing the man at the Pool of Bethesda.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to see the Pool of Bethesda.
Cool.
You're going to be there, and of course I get chosen clips, so that's just as good now.
Yeah.
But at least you can, and coming down and like seeing how close Bethlehem and Jerusalem are. Is just mind-boggling, because they're like 7 miles away, and like you're in Jerusalem at the temple area, you can, that's Bethlehem right there.
Wow.
You think about how close. Because we just think they were so far apart. The religious leaders couldn't even be bothered to go down to Bethlehem, where it was prophesied that the Messiah was going to be born. It's like one thing after another, man. It just starts to enliven your faith, and seeing how the house is laid out, understanding what the birth of Christ was probably like, that it wasn't an inn, it was a guest room, all those different things. A lot of it probably doesn't matter. It's not like something that everybody needs to do, but man, if you can do it, I recommend it over going to Cabo. I really do, from a faith standpoint.
Nice.
Way less margaritas.
I'm working through right now the Old Testament section of the Bema podcast. Have you heard about that?
No.
Anyway, so it's great. And so he talks a lot about how Israel is literally the crossroads of the world, because at the time it was the joining points between Asia and Africa and Europe and everything. Like, what's the land like? What a history that land has, obviously, but what's significant about Israel, do you think?
Well, are you asking topographically,
why did God choose that place?
Yeah, that was confusing when I first went, because it's the promised land, right? It's the land of milk and honey. It doesn't really look like the land of milk and honey in most places. It looks more like Texas.
Yeah.
And it's not desolate, but part of the problem is that the Jordan River has dried up quite a bit, and the Dead Sea's drying up, and I think the climate has changed a lot since back then. But the nice thing about it is, and this is the difference between going on a journey of Paul visit, which was also fun, but is everything's right there.
Huh.
You fly into Tel Aviv, and Jerusalem's not an hour away.
Wow.
And the farthest you go is the Dead Sea, and it might be an hour and a half away from where you were in Jerusalem. So you're not, you're in the bus to go to the next site or whatever, but the Mediterranean's right there, so you're going to go to the to the Mediterranean. You're going to get to see that. You're going to get to see the inscription that has pilot's name on it that they just discovered a few years ago. That everybody said there wasn't a pilot, and then they discovered it. But the land is. I mean, it if you've watched The Chosen, I mean that's really is what it looks like. I think The Chosen was filmed mostly in Texas, so that's why I'm saying that. I mean, it's I don't know, it's San Antonio. That's what it looks like.
It's awesome.
Without an Alamo or a Riverwalk.
The best parts.
Yeah.
So how about you? Like, what have you personally learned, or how's your faith grown through your visits there?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the same thing.
Yeah.
But, of course, as a teacher, then... well, I mean, like, I think, I'm thinking back recently, I talked about Jesus having to go through Samaria, and you read that and you teach that, but then when you see how it all lays out, and you see how far the Jews used to go to get around Samaria so they could get from one area of their territory to the other, and then you realize that the smartest thing would be to go through Samaria, but you realize the prejudice that was there.
Wow.
I mean, when you can see all those things, and, to be at the Valley of Armageddon, which I completely interpret figuratively. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that there's going to be blood up to the necks of horses in some kind of an actual battle at the Valley of Armageddon. But when you think about what John was trying to tell the people and encourage the people and be able to do that, it just makes the whole thing. It just makes it come alive, and it makes me able to teach it, I think, a little bit differently.
I love that.
If I remember it.
Yeah. So if you and Denise were there by yourselves, like, what's like the one site that you would never miss when you go?
Wow. Well, I'd have a hard time with one. The one would be the Sea of Galilee.
Nice.
Because you can actually spend some time there. You'll spend the night there, and spend some time there. Most meaningful got to be the Garden Tomb. But I've been baptized in the Jordan a couple of times, so it'd be hard for me to say at this point.
Yeah.
The Garden Tomb's kind of weird because it's in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, because it's right there by where Jesus got crucified. But the Garden Tomb was discovered by some English people, some British people, and they bought the land to protect it because there's a Palestinian bus stop like right over here.
Wow.
So they had to do that to make that work. And so it's been really well preserved. It's and the Garden of Gethsemane is the same way. And the crazy thing about the Garden of Gethsemane is you got olive trees in there that date back to David. Because olive trees never die. They continue to just sprout. So when you cut one down, the roots and the root of David, the root of Jesse,
wow.
When you go back, that olive tree that you're touching, it goes back to Jesus and goes back to David. So it's just it's crazy. It's a crazy connection.
Yeah. All right. I'm a foodie too. Middle Eastern food is amazing. When you go, like, what are your favorite things?
Okay.
Yeah.
Disappointing thing first.
Okay, good. Hummus?
Because I love the hummus. I'm not I'm not into all of it, but I was really excited about going to dinner the first night and having, good cheese and olives and all of that, and you only get cheese in the morning because they don't mix dairy with meat.
You gotcha.
Because that's a Sabbath,
Wow.
that's a Old Testament law. So you can have eggs and all that stuff and cheese in the morning, and then you get there at night and you'll have olives, but there's no cheese. So I literally, because you can imagine if you know me, would start filling up a little baggie of cheese in the morning. Nice. at breakfast, and then I'd hang on to it, and then at night I would get it out. And one of the guys on one of our trips actually brought one of those big packages of bacon from Costco that are already cooked, and he snuck it into his luggage so that he could have bacon with his eggs, because obviously Jews don't eat pork.
Right.
So we unkoshered the entire country of Israel with him that day. But all the good salads, all the good stuff, great seafood, obviously, because the Mediterranean is right there, and if you've ever been on a cheap cruise or something like that, the food is really way good quality
Nice.
too.
Nice.
Wherever you're at, you're gonna usually eat in your motel and they're ready for you, and it's very good. Yeah,
It's awesome.
You're gonna love it.
Can't wait.
Just can't mix the cheese and the meat.
All right, last thing. So
No cheeseburgers.
give us one favorite story or something that happened.
Well, I mean, the obvious, the obvious story, and I can't say it's favorite because we had a guy have a heart attack and die on one of our trips on the streets of Jerusalem, and I mean, I'm not trying to scare anybody off. He would have had this widowmaker heart attack if he was in Joliet just as well as Jerusalem, and it was terrible. And we had people on the scene immediately that if he could have been revived would have been revived, and we were on the steps of Jerusalem, and yet. What that did, we had Becca on that trip, what that did to our group, I mean, what it still does to me now as I'm retelling the story, to think about the brevity of our life here and where we're going to be, and, and like Tom went from Jerusalem to the old Jerusalem to New Jerusalem,
nice.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, in the language of Revelation, he went immediately from old Jerusalem to New Jerusalem. And it just really, it put a lot of things into perspective. I mean, we always have, that sounds heavy, and it was, but, we always have a ton of fun. The guides are used to this. They're used to Americans. They know what they're doing, and they know how to get you in and get your group in. We just really, I mean, I think for everybody, the communion and the wedding vow renewal. I mean, that was the thing about Tom. When he died on our very last day.
Wow.
So he had communion with us in the garden tomb. He'd renewed his vows with his wife.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know. In Cana. He'd been baptized in the Jordan River. Not only had he been baptized in the Jordan River, but I borrowed his tennis shoes because he had some tennis shoes that were really cool. So old school tennis shoes, and that was when I was going to do a cannonball. We were doing cannonball campaign, and I did a cannonball into the Jordan River. So I needed some shoes on. So I borrowed his shoes. I did that video. I shot all that in his shoes. He had done everything except the Holocaust Museum, and that's when he died. So I mean, I think that brought a ton of peace to Pam. It brought a ton of peace to his family. It was a horrible thing, but. No, there's just something about having been able to be there and see it all that kind of gives you a better glimpse of what it's all going to be about.
So you're saying, if you're gonna go, that's the way to go.
I mean, I've said that a lot. If you're gonna go, that's the way. I mean, and you are gonna go.
Yeah, you are.
That's not a bad way to go. Really, I mean, I could think of a lot worse, and it's just. It's a special thing. I don't want to over glamorize it. I mean, it's still a trip. There's like 7 layers of security to get into Israel, which is why it's so safe to go there, because that obviously they know how to take care of the threats, and we always feel very safe. It's just amazing to drive around and see it, and I don't like, as you well know, I don't like international travel, but I keep going back for this one because it's worth it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
You bet.
I'm super
Go to Israel.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm super excited for Parkview people to get the chance for the faith to become like 3D almost. Like there's such a depth you add to it. So before we go, I just want to let our listeners know that Parkview offers a couple different options to visit Israel. You can check out the link at parkviewchurch.com/Israel for more information on the trips that Pastor Tim and Denise lead, as well as checking out our parkviewchurch.com/global for other opportunities. Additionally, we have links and information in the show notes. Thank you so much. Love and peace.